is shining through the kitchen windows and the hydrangeas are bursting in the garden. We've got bare feet, sourdough on the counter, and freshly picked berries. All signs of a beautiful summertime at the homestead. So join me in another video where I show you how I cook for my family of 4 all week long and how I keep everyone fed amidst the busy summer season. We recently went raspberry picking. One of my favorite things to do in the summertime is to go to all the local farms and get fresh berries. Out of strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries, I have to say that blueberries are my favorite to pick. They're definitely the easiest. When we went and got these raspberries, it was a very hot day, so we didn't get very many, but that's okay. We got enough for what we wanted to do with them. If I could have it my way, I would have fresh berries all summer long. I would even grow them if I could. My favorite thing to do with the berries is to make a jam. You heard me talk about this a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but basically if you just put your berries on the stove in a saucepan with some honey and let it simmer for a while until the water evaporates, then you've got easy freezer jam. And then you can just keep that in the freezer and you don't have to worry about pectin or canning or anything like that. Here I am making a sourdough einkorn pie crust because I'm gonna be making homemade sourdough pop-tarts. I'm going to use my raspberry jam as the filling, and I'm going to experiment with using pie crust for the top and the bottom. Taking a quick pause on the Pop-Tarts to go outside and pick some fresh flowers. Everything's blooming, and this is just what summer dreams are made of. I love picking the fresh flowers, putting them in whatever vases I can, and keeping them around in the kitchen while I'm cooking. Ideally, I wouldn't be in the kitchen very much in the summertime at all because I'd love to just be outside all day, but we do have to cook and I do enjoy cooking, so having the fresh flowers in the kitchen helps me enjoy the beauty of the summertime, even when I'm inside. I also still have kids napping, so it doesn't really make sense to actually be outside all day. We wouldn't actually want to do that. And to be honest, I really do enjoy the quiet time. Now, if I'm doing sourdough and I'm doing bread and another recipe, I like to do them on the same day because if I'm going to be turning the oven on and I'm going to be baking bread, I might as well do 2 in 1. So in this day, I'm actually doing a sourdough sandwich loaf, and I'm also going to be making Pop-Tarts in the oven. There was a gap between when I made the Pop-Tart dough and when I'm actually cooking them, which is fine. I love that about sourdough. You can keep it in the fridge and it will hold up until you're ready to bake it. That makes sourdough a lot easier on your schedule. For the Pop-Tarts, I'm using my einkorn sourdough pie crust recipe. I basically decided to just make these little tiny pie crusts and then stuff them with a thickened version of my raspberry jam. I love to be creative with my cooking and think about new ways to do the same old thing. Instead of just doing sourdough bread with jam on top, why not add a little bit of sourdough with some butter and flour, make a pie crust out of it, and then add the jam in the middle for a special treat. This recipe is coming to the blog, theduvallhomestead.com, and I'll link it below when it's ready. It was a labor of love because rolling out the dough and then putting the little pockets together, it's all probably more work than I would do on the normal basis, but for a treat, this was a really good idea. I know that sugar can be a hard one in households, especially with kids, and adults too. I mean, everyone likes sugar. And it's nice to have a treat that is not gonna break the bank, if you know what I mean. It's not gonna be super sugary. This doesn't have any added sugar. It's just got the raspberry filling, which has honey in it. And then the pie crust dough, of course, has butter and everything, but einkorn flour is used, so it's an ancient grain that's easier to digest. So it makes the recipe quite a bit healthier. I want to take a quick break from today's video to talk about Bend Soap Company. Originally formulated to help with eczema, the goat's milk soap helps your skin become hydrated, soft, healthy, and good looking. I was on the hunt for a really long time for either dishwashing gloves that didn't break and weren't expensive, or a soap that wouldn't make my hands really dry when I was washing the dishes. I never found gloves that didn't break within a few days of me using them, so I decided to try to find a soap that would be nourishing to my hands. Ben Soap Company Goat's Milk Soap helps my hands feel soft and moisturized even after doing dishes after breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. These are my hands after using the goat's milk soap for a while now without any dish gloves at all. As a comparison, when I was making homemade soap with Castile soap and water and I tried to lose my dish gloves, I had flaky, dry skin on the tops of both of my hands. I no longer wear dish gloves. My hands look and feel amazing even though I wash them without any gloves at all. I use just a bar of soap and a sponge and it does the job really nicely. In fact, when I first started using the soap, my hands were more moisturized than when I hadn't been using the soap, even though I was using gloves before. The soap has raw goat's milk, sustainable palm oil, coconut oil, and olive oil. These oils are packed with anti-aging antioxidants, vitamin A, D, K, and E, and leaves your skin feeling silky smooth and soft to the touch. I also really enjoy the goat's milk soap in the shower. I use it for shaving, and I can use it on our children. My son also had a very small patch of eczema, and within 1 to 2 times of using the soap, that went away. One of my favorites is the oatmeal and honey goat milk soap. It has real oats and honey to boost hydration and gently exfoliate the skin. Check out Ben Soap Company Goat's Milk Soap and use my discount code Homestead10 for an extra 10% off at checkout. Instead of going to dance class and gymnastics class and the library and all those indoor things we used to do in the wintertime, I'm taking my kids a lot to the farms to pick berries. So today we got blueberries, and of course we wanted to make blueberry popsicles. I have the recipe for homemade popsicles on the blog, theduvallhomestead.com, or you can Google Duvall Homestead popsicles and you'll find them there. Oh. Okay, today has been one of those days. We had a very small sickness run through the family. It's just been busy. It's like you can't stay on top of one thing after another. Everything is kind of piling up. And all of a sudden it's dinner time and I have to have a meal on the table, and this happens not a lot, but sometimes. I usually have a really nice flow of recipes and cooking and sourdough and fermenting going in the kitchen at all times. So I never really don't have anything to cook for a meal or don't have an idea of what I'm gonna cook by the time the meal comes around. But today was one of those days I looked at the clock and all of a sudden I had to come up with a meal and I did not have a plan yet. I looked in my fridge and I have pork and I have chicken. So I'm obviously gonna make pork and chicken, but I don't really know what else to make with that. So I'm gonna look for a veggie, I'm gonna look for a carb. One protein, one vegetable, one carb is always my go-to. I have a hungry family and this meal really stuck up on me. So we will see how fast I can put together something, and it just might turn out really beautiful. Sometimes in these situations, a really beautiful meal comes out of nowhere when you're trying something new. So that's what I'm gonna do today. So this is a basic fried chicken or fried meat recipe. I'm using egg in one bowl with a little bit of lemon, and then einkorn flour with salt and seasonings in another bowl. You dredge the meat and the egg first and then the flour, and you've got yourself a fried meat. You can also use breadcrumbs, but einkorn flour is a quicker version. I'm frying the chicken and the pork in bacon fat that I had left over from the weekend. So while those are sauteing on the skillet, I'm chopping up some vegetables. I'm gonna be putting all of these in the oven to roast together so all the juices from the pork and the chicken can go into the vegetables and create a really yummy dish. To my vegetables, I'm adding onions, zucchini, mushrooms, and herbs. And I'm making a really yummy sauce to go on the top. This is a maple honey pork glaze. I'm basically scraping up all the bits from the cast iron skillet and adding maple syrup and honey and a little bit of seasoning too, and it was just decadent and delicious. You know, patience is always something as a mom that you need to continue to learn how to find. Just when you think you have enough patience, something will test it. And when we kind of had a sickness go through, it was one person was sick and then the next person was sick. And then after that, we had an injury. My daughter hit her head really hard against a piece of wood and got a really big cut. And it just reminded me that patience is a practice, just like cooking. When you think that you know how to cook everything, it's good to try to cook something new. Or when you think you don't have time to cook something, maybe all you need to do is take a deep breath and take one step at a time, put one foot in front of the other. Start with a meat, then go to a vegetable, and before you know it, you'll have a full meal. Because of the hot weather and because we've been taking our time and spending more time outside, my loaf over-fermented, which keeps happening to me, and I need to stop leaving it out on the counter. When I took it out of the bowl, it was a very sloppy, sticky mess, and I knew that I could not bake it. Instead of tossing the whole thing, I decided to add some olive oil and some seasonings and turn it into hamburger buns. This was a total test, obviously did not follow a recipe, and they turned out so great. When you are faced with a dilemma or a conflict in your home or your life, I encourage you to create a fresh perspective for yourself and meet yourself wherever you're at. It doesn't help to look at the past, and it doesn't help to say to yourself, this was supposed to work, or this is how this was supposed to be, because it's not. So instead, try saying, this is what I have now, and these are my options. It's like if you were reading a book and then one of the chapters got ripped out. You can either dwell about how you will never know what that chapter said, or you can just open up to a new page and start from there. Use your imagination to come up with a new plan. Now, sometimes this might be easier than others. There's a quote from Isaiah 40:31 that I wanted to read. It goes, "Those who wait for the Lord will gain new strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not get tired, and they will walk and not become weary." When you try to push it too far in your life, your kitchen, your household, with your children, that's when things tend to fail. Having patience, trust, and a fresh perspective when things don't necessarily go your way always yields a more positive result for everyone. My daughter got a cut in her forehead from hitting the bed frame, like I said, and my husband and I were both kind of on the edge about whether or not we should take her in to get some kind of stitches. I don't think it was deep enough to do that, so we didn't end up going in. But I did want to make sure that we kept something on it to prevent scarring and keep it healed. This was about a week ago, so I can tell you now that she is definitely better. We did not need to go in, and this has helped her since then. But what I'm going to make here is like a wounded warrior cream, as I call it. And it's gonna have beeswax, coconut oil, olive oil, honey. And then I'm gonna throw in vitamin E oil, lavender, tea tree oil, myrrh, and helichrysum. Those oils are calming, they're really good for the skin, and the tea tree oil has the antibacterial in it. I ended up buying another cream as well, but it wasn't arriving in time, so that's why I whipped this up, because when you get wounded, it is important to keep it moist. Of course, we had Neosporin on hand as well, but if I can do something more natural, that's what I prefer to do. So we did that, and it all worked out really well. Later that evening, I went ahead and stretched and folded my next dough because that first loaf, like I told you, did not work out. So we're trying this again. And that one ended up over-fermenting as well. It turns out einkorn flour does over-ferment quite easily, and I left it out for way too long. But I decided to bake it anyway because even though it'll be thinner slices, we can still use it for French toast, and it's gonna be delicious with honey butter on top too. I had someone ask me about einkorn loaves and if they can still become bubbly and fluffy like regular flour, and their answer is yes. However, it won't be as much because there isn't as much gluten, but definitely it's not gonna be a super dense loaf that tastes, too dense to even eat. No, 100% einkorn loaves can definitely be moist and fluffy. They do have a nuttier flavor to them when you do 100% einkorn, which some people might enjoy. I know I do. This morning we were feeling much better. I got a workout in the morning, and I'm gonna be making a special breakfast for my family. I'm gonna be doing sourdough einkorn crepes with a blueberry filling. You saw me make crepes a few weeks ago, and I mentioned that I wanted to have a jam filling and didn't have one at that time, so very happy I could whip this up this time. I just added blueberries and honey to the stove like I normally do, and then I had cream cheese on hand too. So I made the crepes and I filled them with cream cheese and blueberry jam, sprinkled a little bit of powdered sugar and maple syrup on top. For everyone else, I don't prefer those add-ons because I think there's enough sugar in it already with the blueberries. I tend to like things more bland. I know that's probably pretty unpopular, but when I have pancakes or whatnot, like I said, I'll put chocolate chips in it, but I really am not a big fan of the maple syrups and the powdered sugar. I do like how it looks. It's very pretty whenever I take pictures. But I'm a very simple eater. These did turn out delicious. Very happy we did that. We had so many blueberries that we were eating them constantly, and we still were not hardly making a dent in the bag that we got. So I'm gonna go ahead and make some blueberry muffins. These are sourdough einkorn muffins. I'm gonna let the dough ferment. You'll see it really puffs up nicely, becomes a very spongy dough. Add my blueberries. This recipe will be on the blog, theduvallhomestead.com as well. I am a little bit behind on the blog post side of things. I have a bunch of recipes that need to go on the blog that I just need to type up. I don't think I've ever been this behind on posting blog posts, but I am. Thank you for joining me as I took care of my family, cooked for them, cared for them, and made the kitchen go around and around with a fresh and positive perspective on each day. Don't forget to check out Ben's Soap Company and use the code Homestead10 for 10% off your natural goat's milk soap order. Thank you so much for stopping by the Duvall Homestead.